And then at the White House briefing this afternoon, my next guest said the U.S. Coast Guard is mindful of just how serious this storm is and that her men and women are ready to respond. Commandant of the U.S. Coast Guard, Admiral Linda Fagan, joining me now. Admiral, I'm so glad that we're able to connect. I watched along. I watched you, head of FEMA, DHS, National Hurricane Center, the president, the VP. All of you were on this call talking about emergency response. I'm just curious what you thought of that call. Do you still have concerns? Do you feel good about coordination right now? What was your overall assessment after that brief?
Yeah, no, thank you, Karen. Appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit more about the Coast Guard and what we're doing to be ready to respond. And I shared that during the briefing. One, I want people to know that this is a huge storm with potential really significant impacts and a lot of discussion around the storm surge, wind, and the potential for property damage and loss, but more importantly, the potential for loss of life. And the Coast Guard's primary mission and focus is life-saving, ensuring that people don't lose their lives. And after that is protecting the marine transportation system, the port and the Port of Tampa, which I talked about earlier. I want your viewers to know that the United States Coast Guard is ready. We have moved people, ships, aircraft out of harm's way, out of the way of Milton, so that as it is safe for us to begin to operate again, we're able to move quickly back into the area and ensure that lives are not lost. The best thing that people couldn't do was to have evacuated when there was time to do that. I can't just overemphasize how impactful storm surge and moving water is. It can be incredibly devastating, and it's easy to underestimate just how dangerous what the volume of water is that we're talking about in this storm.
Sure, and we're talking about possibly a historic storm now. And I know you've deployed almost, 1,300 people now to Florida. Can you give me a couple of examples of just the main objectives here? Where did you sort of bump up resources, maybe increase resources, and why?
So we have, as I said, the people that are stationed in Florida in harm's way, we've moved just out of the significant impact area so that they are able to flow back in quickly. My main operational commander is based in Miami, but we've moved him forward into Tallahassee, along with other emergency managers, first responders to support the state emergency operations center, to help support FEMA. We've got shallow water boats and teams ready to flow back in, helicopters and those crews, and they're really the first ones that we begin to move back in as the bands pass and we get into a weather window. So people, boats. Takes a little longer for the large cutters to come back into the area, but they will be back. They will be some of the first ones into the Port of Tampa to begin those assessments to ensure that we're able to reopen the port and get that critical commerce flowing. But so we've got ready assets ready to go now. And as we're able to assess and understand what the impacts of the storm actually were overnight and into the morning, we're ready to flow additional resources that we may need to ensure there's no additional loss of life, that FEMA may need, and any of our other federal, state, and local operators. It's a great integrated team effort, and we are absolutely ready.
Admiral, your swift water rescue teams, they're the best in the country. We witnessed at least one water rescue, as you know, you got a lot of attention for when your helo crew, your rescue swimmer got to that man and his dog that needed help. They had to, get off their boat immediately. Are you concerned at this point about any other boaters out in the water? I know you did have to respond to a cruise ship that got stuck. There were some medical emergencies. Can you kind of bring us up to date on folks that are out in the water right now?
Yeah. So again, hopefully people that were on the water and in the storm's path have heeded those warnings and moved to get themselves out of harm's way. We obviously, we stand 24/7 watches. We are available. We take radio calls for distress, but the best thing people could have done was to get themselves out of harm's way, whether they are living in a coastal community or on a boat. and in need. The rescue you cited from just a week or so ago, right? That is us at our best, going out into harm's way and helping save lives and ensure that in this case, the individual and his dog did not succumb to the sea. We work quite a bit with the large ships, the commercial ships, and the passenger industry, and cruise ships are part of that industry, communicating port status, risk, and sometimes people on cruise ships have medical emergencies. We do go out and do those medevacs, but work with those industries to ensure that when and where they need to come into port, if their original port of call has been impacted by a hurricane, such as in this case, that they're able to do it safely. Just great communications, all very predictable. And we work again closely with the port and port community to both close ports and then reopen them in the aftermath, and done in a way that's mindful to mitigate loss of life, prevent damage to property, and ensure then that our critical access to commerce begins flowing again as quickly as possible.
Well, it's also great to know that you were able to respond to this cruise ship that needed to get folks to safety because of medical issues. One last question, Admiral, if you don't mind. I know on this briefing with the president that you all discussed the difficulties of dealing with misinformation. The president brought it up. The vice president brought it up. The head of FEMA. Has any of this misinformation related to the storm complicated your efforts in any way? And is there anything you want to say now while you have the floor just about the misinformation that's been out there, because it's impacted clearly other efforts?
We are absolutely ready and in position to respond. And the thing that I think I'd like your viewers to know is that your Coast Guard is ready and resilient and out there to help you in your time of need. Now, while the storm is at its height, we are not there because we have moved ourselves out of harm's way, but we will be there. We will be back. And regardless of what Mike had said, your Coast Guard, who is part of the communities that have been impacted, we are here, we're ready, and it's a privilege to serve the American public, and we will be there in your time of need as the storm impacts coastal Florida.
Commandant of the U.S. Coast Guard, Admiral Linda Fagan, thank you so much, Admiral. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, Kara.